Hello, I'm Mary Ito, and welcome to the CRAM podcast. We're all about innovative and exciting research that's happening in Canada and abroad. CRAM is a charity, and we rely on your support. If you'd like to make a donation, you can head over to our website, cramideas.com. Well, imagine you are living in a remote community in Canada and you live with heart failure, which could be deadly. What do you do when the nearest hospital is hundreds of kilometers away? In Canada, over 8% of the population suffers from heart disease, and there are many more people who don't even know it. It's also a worldwide issue, with 1 in 3 deaths caused by cardiovascular diseases. That is almost 20 million people. It's hard to even imagine. And with aging populations, the problem is increasing. Dr. Heather Ross has been grappling with the issue of providing quality care for heart patients no matter where they live. She's the head of cardiology at the Peter Munk Cardiac Center in Toronto, and she joins us. Hello, Heather.
Hi, Mary. Good to see you again.
It is good to see you. We were trying to figure out just how far back we go, and it goes back decades.
It's been a while.
Yeah. So I want to start off first because I'm really intrigued by this idea about how people can just go about their daily business and they don't even realize that they have heart disease and maybe even the early stages of heart failure. Like, how does that all work?
Well, I think it works because, or as a cause of, some of the big problems that we're seeing. So the rise in obesity, the rise in sedentary lifestyle, the reduction in physical activity, and then the high prevalence of conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure. And all of these can come together and set the stage for cardiovascular disease. And as a result, we're seeing this increase in cardiovascular disease, in particular, an increase in low and middle income countries.
So then how is it that it remains silent for so long?
Well, when we think about a disease like coronary artery disease, you've got your major arteries in the heart, and as plaque or atherosclerosis develops in those arteries, it takes a while for the narrowing to get to a stage where it's so narrow that it's actually causing limitations in the blood flow downstream from the artery. So you're not going to be aware that you've got the problem until that obstruction reaches that stage that causes a problem with downstream blood flow. But it still puts you at risk for heart attacks, which might be your first presentation. And it still puts you at risk for ischemia or angina, where you're having a problem with that blood flow. So you can be fine one day and then potentially have a heart attack because of that vascular disease. Or you could be fine and then the vascular disease just progresses enough to be causing a problem with blood flow. So on Monday, you're fine. And on Tuesday, when you do your activity, you now have a problem with the blood flow and it's causing symptoms like angina. So that's how we go from being silent to manifest, if you will, seemingly overnight.
Yeah, because we all know stories of people who, oh my gosh, what a shock, right? They were well one day and then all of a sudden they had this heart attack. When I gave that statistic about over 8% of the population suffers from heart disease in Canada, but many more don't know it. Do we have any estimate as far as how many people may be affected, but they don't know it?
So it's a great question. When you think about it, I can focus on heart failure as an example. So heart failure is ranked across these stages from A to D. And A is people who are at risk for heart failure. Now, heart failure itself means the inability of the heart to pump adequately to meet the needs of the body, just so I set the stage for it. And the commonest cause of heart failure in Canada is heart artery disease or coronary artery disease. And so when we think about heart failure, stage A are those at risk, so high blood pressure, diabetes. Stage B are people who have a problem with the heart function and don't know it. And they have done large population level studies in a couple of areas in the US where they've done echocardiograms or heart ultrasounds on the whole population in a community. And it shows that 1 in 20 or 5% have a problem with the heart function and aren't even aware of it. Stage C is where you start having symptoms, and stage D is more advanced heart failure, which thankfully is a much smaller percentage. So you can see how, if you think about the population who have high blood pressure, diabetes, or who are obese, that's this many. Then you have 1 in 20 who already have a problem and don't know it. And then you have the people who've gone on to develop symptoms. So not to panic people, but there is a prevalence of disease out there that has gone undetected.
And I think many people,
it's not minor.
Yeah, right. Common. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think many people assume, well, this is a problem of the elderly.
Well, it isn't. I say that with all seriousness, but some humor, because I'm getting older.
We all are, Heather.
As you and I have had these interviews, but it isn't just a problem or a condition of the elderly. And I think, yes, it is true that cardiovascular disease prevalence goes up and the incidence goes up as we age, but we still see it in younger people. And again, I come back to the things that have happened in our society where people are just not as active as they used to be. A really interesting finding, Mary, that we published on recently, Kate Hanneman was the lead on the paper, was air quality. So when we think about climate change and global warming, greenhouse gas emissions, and the impact of climate change on cardiovascular disease, it's enormous. That is the heat and the impact of heat on cardiovascular disease, but things like particulate matter in the air. So how does that all work? And sometimes my head gets, it's like, how do you get it all sorted? Climate change, increased forest fires. We can think about what's happening right now in Canada from coast to coast. You can think about the fires burning out of control up north. They are pushing particulate matter into the air. And Dr. Hanneman, with this remarkable paper published in Radiology, showed that more particulate matter is associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease. So it's not hard, Mary, to think about why we're seeing so much cardiovascular disease now with just changes in the prevalence of obesity, reduced exercise, and then the impact of global warming and the impact, for example, on particulate matter in the air, pushed into the air by the forest fires, and how that is changing rates of cardiovascular disease. So it is real. And for all the reasons I've said and others, we need to think about it. People need to think about their heart health and what they can do to change their stars.
Yeah. I mean, there's the definition that you gave of heart failure, but like, what actually happens when a heart fails and what does that feel like? Because I think it's important to know like what that feels like.
Sure. What are the symptoms? It's a great question. So the commonest symptoms are fatigue, which in today's day and age of many things coming at you and, sleep, quality sleep, fatigue can be for so many different reasons, but fatigue is one of the commonest symptoms of heart failure. So activities that you used to do without even thinking about it become now activities that you can't do anymore. You just don't have the energy. So fatigue, shortness of breath, specifically with activity. So again, I used to be able to walk 2 subway stops, and now I'm finding I'm short of breath when I do it. Shortness of breath at night, and in particular when you lie down. Shortness of breath bending over to do up your shoelaces. So shortness of breath, big common one. Swelling in the ankles, very common symptom that people will notice. People may notice palpitations, feeling the heart race or pound. And these would be common symptoms. But when you think about it, and this is often what I say to patients, you do your activity and you sort of benchmark or level set the activity that you can do. If you're working at your activity, in fact, you should ultimately be able to do more. If you're unable to do the activity that you normally do because you're more fatigued or you're more short of breath or you have chest discomfort, those are warning signs that you should seek attention to try to understand what that is about.
Mm. I think about the interview that I did with you quite a few years ago, and it was about your first expedition when you went to the Antarctic. And I mean, to me, it was so revelatory when you described what it felt like to have. I guess it was heart failure, right? It was a pulmonary edema, which is,
edema.
Yeah. And I just thought, okay, here's a doctor who treats patients. Now she's experiencing it. I mean, can you just recount? Because to me, it was so vivid about what that felt like.
So yeah, it's taken me a while to fully incorporate on a personal level that experience.
Well, I remember you had a tough time telling me about it.
Yeah, so I've gotten better at that now. But basically what happened in high altitude pulmonary edema, it's not that the heart's not working. The problem is at the level of the pulmonary blood vessels where they do what's known as vasoconstriction, so they get really narrow. And as a consequence, when the blood's trying to flow through, it can't because the vessels have tightened down. And so you push the fluid into what are called the alveoli, which are the places in your lungs that you exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide. When you push fluid into them, they can't exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide, and your oxygen levels get very, very low. Mine were down into the 40s, which is quite low. And it's a climber emergency, and I couldn't breathe. I couldn't lie down, which is a classic symptom where you can't breathe when you lie down. It's called orthopnea. That's the medical term we use for it. So you prop your head up with pillows. In my case, I had to sit up, and I started to, come close to frothing the fluid in my lungs because it had been pushed out of my blood vessels into my alveoli. And, I remember after the fact, I took sildenafil or Viagra, which...
Viagra?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Because it opens the blood vessels. That's how it worked for the other reason that it's used. But so it opens the blood vessels, and it brought the pressures in my lungs down. It allowed the blood flow to go back through my lungs in the normal way, and my oxygen levels improved. But I had to come down the mountain. That was the best thing because it was caused by the altitude. But I remember after the fact thinking to myself, I experienced this feeling of orthopnea and shortness of breath for hours. And I have patients who live with it every damn day. And that was just the most impactful. I mean, I had 18 years of training to do what I do as a doctor, and I had 18 hours on that mountain, and they were more educational than almost anything because I had this opportunity. Although it was a much shortened time, I had this incredible opportunity to feel what patients feel. And I think, it's not something you want to feel. I'm just here to tell you. And I think it gave me tremendous respect for what patients go through on a daily basis and what they experience.
Yeah. See, when you say that was hours for you, but people experience that every day. I can't. Every day. So, I mean, when you can't get enough air, is the feeling like you're choking, like someone's got your throat? But you also said it was water. So is it like you're underwater and you can't breathe?
So I felt like I was drowning. That is how it actually felt for me in the moment. I think there's a spectrum of the symptom. Some people can experience it as it's been described to me by my patients. So some people experience it as a choking, some as a tightness or inability to get their breath. Some feel it as an incessant cough that they can't get rid of. They're just, every day they lie down, they cough. Some people experience it as shortness of breath. And so it's just that constant feeling of not getting enough air.
Yeah.
And feeling it when you lie down at night, and then it is relieved by actually propping yourself up with pillows, feeling it when you're out walking. So, you can't, get your mail at the end of your driveway. You can't walk your dog in the same way. Whatever the activity is, you feel the shortness of breath that becomes limiting. So what happens is people peel back their activities because they don't want to feel short of breath. And then they have to peel back their activities a bit more. And you can see how your life can become circumscribed and compressed by the symptoms that you're having when you were trying to live your full life. And that's why we use activity and what people can do from an activity perspective as a benchmarking, and why I ask patients to keep track of that so that we can start to see, is it getting better? Can you do more? Or is it staying the same, which sometimes is still a win? But the thing we want them to watch for is it getting less, which is, definitely not what we want to see. Definitely not what we want to see. Yeah.
I'm actually surprised that somebody, or I should say impressed that someone was carrying Viagra on a mountain climbing expedition.
Well, we were carrying Viagra, not for what you think.
Okay, because I thought, wow, you're facing every situation there.
We were carrying Viagra because we had a transplant recipient with us, and we wanted to be safe for every possible eventuality. And that's where the irony is, right? The transplant recipient was fine, and the transplant doctor was the one who ran into trouble on the mountain. No, Dale Shipham, our remarkable transplant recipient, he was fine. In fact, when I came down the mountain, because it was this climber emergency and I had to get down the mountain, Barry Blanchard was our mountain guide. Dave Stark was our other mountain guide. Barry took me down. I was able to climb down, but I did it with something known as short roping. So he's behind me, and on the climbing harness, he has me short roped so that I can't fall, because the fear was, I still was hypoxic, and the fear was that I mightn't be able to walk down. So he had me short roped, and then behind him was Dale, and he was carrying some of my gear. And so the three of us it was about, I want to say it was about 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. The blog would say exactly, but it was somewhere around that in the morning that we started down climbing. And you're in the Antarctic, so it's light 24 hours of the day. So that was one saving grace, that we didn't have to deal with trying to down climb in pitch. But I know it was still one of those moments in life. It was an absolute pivotal moment in life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I want to talk to you more about your expeditions a little later, but just talking about currently your research and what you're doing. I remember when you first spoke about Medley, which is that remote patient monitoring application. I'd love you to describe, for people who've never heard of it, how does that work and where are you at with that now?
Well, thank you for that. So Medley is an app that lives on the patient's phone. It's software as a medical device. And in that app is an algorithm that we tested and validated that acts as a clinician proxy, meaning it takes the information that you put in, which is your weight and your blood pressure and your heart rate, and you answer some simple questions about how you're feeling. And if there's anything abnormal, then it opens a series of other questions to ensure that you've got the right information. You put that into the app, it lives on your phone, and in that amount of time, it actually tells you what to do for that day. So it pushes the instructions that could be around the diuretic dosing to take or other instructions for you in that day. It's a Health Canada Class 2 approved medical device because it does push prescription medications. And so that's the app side of it. And then the Medley program is the nurse coordinator aspect of it that sits with the patient. So the patient uses the app, and if they alert, the messaging goes to the nurse coordinator for the nurse coordinator to interact with the patient directly and talk about the care, what the Medley app is prescribed, how the patient's doing, any other additional instructions. So it is the combination of the app and the nurse coordinator that create the Medley program. And we've tested this out and validated. More than 2,000 patients have come through the Medley program. We actually currently actively have more than 1,000 patients on Medley right now. And I am excited to say that it'll be an announcement, but Medley has been licensed, so it's now making that jump to a commercial product, which is this crazy exciting journey. I mean, who would have thought when you had this idea and you ended up with an engineer, Joe Cafazo, and a PhD student at the time, Emily Sita, who's now on staff at U of T, that you would have created something that would have this journey in itself to change the lives for patients with heart failure, and then become a commercial entity.
Yeah,
I
that's
never
amazing.
thought that would happen. It's kind of crazy.
I know. I think I read somewhere, and I thought that, well, you tell me whether this is an apt description. I think I read somewhere that it's like a virtual clinic. And I thought, that's such a cool way to describe it, right? Because instead of having to physically go in there, you can monitor everything at home. And if you run into a problem, right, you can see.
It interacts right away.
Yeah.
And that's key, right, Mary? So for some of the patients that we serve with Medley, they may be in a remote environment. They may not have access to a cardiologist. They may be out of Wi-Fi or broadband, and the app living on the phone will still manage them.
Yeah.
And then when they get back into Wi-Fi coverage, it'll send all the information to the coordinator and to the program, but it'll still manage the patient, even if they're outside of Wi-Fi. So I think we've done a few really important evaluations of Medley, and one is that we know that because of the way we deployed it, that we are equity designed, like we're built for equity. We can see that we're hitting even those that are most made vulnerable communities. So that's really important. So it's not something that's just for the 1%. It's actually really services a broad community. We used Medley specifically to optimize guideline-directed care, and we showed that we were able to get more patients to target faster with fewer visits. And we evaluated that by looking at the carbon costs, and we showed tremendous carbon savings by using Medley. And it makes sense. Patients don't have to get in the car to drive to clinic, but it was the first really of its kind to show that type of carbon saving, which seems important as I circle back to the issues about our planetary health and sustainability and responsibility when we're thinking about how we provide care. So we're super excited about this next journey for Medley.
Well, and I also think about those people, as you say, like if somebody's way the heck in the bush even, right? They can't get to a hospital or specialized care. It's 100 kilometers away, whatever. They can just use Medley, right? I mean, you must have all kinds of examples of that, of somebody who's living with heart failure. They have Medley.
We do. We do. So that is a big part of what Medley provides. We have an established MOU with Winnebago Area Health Authority, which is 6 communities along James and Hudson Bay, largely Cree communities. And we provide Medley for those communities. And we've deployed Medley in those communities. And many of those are forward nursing stations, so they have no access to healthcare. In the moment, they have a nurse or in some of the communities, a nurse practitioner in community, but they don't have doctors in community. And so by using Medley and by being able to provide that care in the communities, we're improving the access. So that's part of the broader vision. Medley is one of the tools in our toolkit to leverage digital health tools to improve access to care.
I was also fascinated by, and I think I might have heard this in another interview you did, that you are sitting on a huge amount of data, right? Patient data. And you were talking about, and I don't know if this is through machine learning that you're using. Is it machine learning?
Yep.
Okay. And it's able to, I guess, sort out this data, and you can use it in such like really a life-saving way to determine risk and who needs a heart transplant. Like, explain that to me, because I think that's so interesting.
So, well, there's three aspects to that I'll unpack. So the first is we, through the incredible transformational gifts from the Peter and Melanie Munk Foundation and from the Ted Rogers Family Foundation, we had this opportunity to create a data environment that would enable complex biostatistics, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So we unlocked this data at the Peter Munk Cardiac Center and created something called the Digital Cardiovascular Health Platform, which is this it's a data lake. That's the way to think about it. Just think about a giant lake and all the data is going into this data lake. And the hospital, UHN, felt that this data environment that we created really was an incredible opportunity. And so the Digital Cardiovascular Health Platform extended into the digital health platform and is a data lake for the entire UHN. So it's a massive amount of data. You can think about everything from radiology to laboratory to ultrasounds of the heart, ECGs. All of this resides in one place. And so that's the environment that was created. And then the vision of Barry Rubin through the foundational gift from the Peter and Melanie Munk Foundation, he created a Peter Munk AI team and created this group, this environment, this nidus of people to come together and do artificial intelligence research and machine learning. So you've got this environment, and then you've got these incredible scientists. And when things like that collide, and you collide some clinicians in there, you get a wonderful opportunity for ideas.
But, so for me, I think about, okay, you have this huge amount of data, all kinds of, pardon me, statistics coming from patients, right?
Yep.
So, but the thing is, like, how do you know what you're looking for?
It's great. It's a great question. So I'm going to give you a granular example. We worked collaboratively with Apple. And the question we asked, and Apple co-developed this with us. It was an amazing partnership, and we're into the next phase. But let me tell you about this partnership. So we asked the question, can parameters from the Apple Watch with all their sensors, and because they've got oximetry and they've got all these amazing sensors, can sensors from the Apple Watch, either individually or putting them together with information from the patients, can we predict somebody's cardiopulmonary performance? Right? What is your cardiopulmonary performance? Your cardiopulmonary performance, when we do it, it's called a cardiopulmonary exercise test. You will have seen them on TV with the athletes with the mask hooked up and on the treadmill. So we basically said, we're going to do the ground truth, so the absolute truth. So you're asking, how do you know? So we did the ground truth. We did a formal cardiopulmonary exercise test, and then we looked at all this information from the Apple Watch, and we used large language models, so this newer era of machine learning or deep learning. Yeah. And we sought to predict the cardiopulmonary performance. And what we found was we actually we can use parameters from the Apple Watch to predict somebody's cardiopulmonary performance.
Without doing the traditional test. That's what you're saying.
So we matched it head to head against the traditional test, and we showed we were really good at predicting it, which means now that we have a watch that can predict somebody's cardiopulmonary performance. But what was more interesting than that was changes in the watch's prediction of cardiopulmonary performance heralded or gave warning of somebody having an event.
How so?
So somebody requiring a hospitalization for heart failure, requiring intravenous medications for heart failure, needing a transplant. So the thing that blows your mind, I'm going to walk us through, is the watch, which is measuring somebody's cardiopulmonary performance, shows a change, and that change happens on average about 7 days before the patient gets into trouble.
Okay. Can I ask you then? The change that happens 7 days before, do you actually know how much of a change that has to be that is going to get that person in trouble?
We know how much of a change is predictive of the patient getting into trouble.
Okay.
So that's kind of
wow. Yeah.
Right?
Okay, is this common knowledge now? Do people know? Oh no. Okay.
No. This is under revision for publication. So that's why I'm not labeling exact numbers for you.
Okay.
But the next phase, and we receive CRHR funding, which is one of the big funding agencies in Canada, is to validate this in a larger population. So is this actually true, what we found?
Right.
And if it is, then we may have found an early warning signal.
Yeah, that'd be incredible. So, okay, just to take it. So if I have the watch and then I, let's say, see this change, then, okay, so would I have to know that change is significant, or would it automatically go to someone who knows it's significant?
So right now, we are the mastery of Joe DeHamel and Chris McIntosh and team is that the information comes through a data pipeline, the algorithm runs on it, and it spits out the prediction. So the team would know.
The team would know. Wouldn't it be great, though, if you could create awareness among people so that, right? Because
but that's what Medley did, right? But Medley required the patient to get honest, requires the patient to actually do things every morning. The watch would be free living and unobtrusive in the background, seeing if you're about to get into trouble. So if we take it the couple of steps, and listen, you can't pop this out as an early warning signal until you've proven that it really is true. That's the first thing. You got to validate it. It is the way of science and medicine.
Right.
So we got to validate that it's true. And then if it is true, we have to prove that providing that early warning signal allows us to intervene and change the outcome. So if the early warning signal is validated, then if I design an intervention trial where I act on that information, meaning I prescribe something for the patient, then I actually change what happens to the patient. So that is so exciting. That would be the next step, which is we have to. You have to, right? Yeah. And this is AI, so people have to be able to trust this. We have to validate this in a broader group of patients to make sure that it's true, to get that trust, so that people will believe, because there are still concerns with AI, right? There's, of course, sure. People talk about the hallucinations in the system. We can talk about the potential of bias, because maybe the algorithm was only studied in a population of patients, and now you're trying to apply it to a totally different population of patients. So that creates the potential for bias in the system. So these are all things, we have to do it the right way. Yeah. So it's super exciting. It is. And it makes me think, okay, I understand. Of course, you have to validate it. You have to see the measurements, right, of what that means, that drop or that the alert or the warning. But there's something there. There's something there. Right. And so it makes me think, like, it's not nothing. There's something. Yep. And I feel as if, like, you tell me, the information is out there. It's just, how do we get at it? Like, what is the correct way? Right? It's not like it's not there. No, there is a lot of information there. So, we had, I think it's like, in the study that we did, we had more than 140 million data points. So the information is there. What matters is being appropriate stewards of the data, to ensure equity, to ensure privacy, to be transparent about it, so it's not a black box, so people understand what went into it, so they can have that trust, to have the co-development of things with patients, have patients engaged every step of the way so that what is happening is relevant to patients and matters to patients.
Yeah.
The data is there. It's definitely there. And I feel so optimistic about the future.
Oh, that's amazing. With everything you're doing too, I do want to touch on Test Your Limits, which we mentioned earlier, the expedition, the first one you did when you had that terrible episode in the Antarctic. Yeah. So what's happening with Test Your Limits now? Because it's like almost 30 years old?
It's 20 years. 2006 was the first one. So 20 years.
20 years. Okay.
We've done 11 trips and raised almost $5 million. The importance of the fundraising is crucial because when we did the first trip, it was to help pay for mechanical hearts because they were not funded yet in Canada. And the way we've done Test Your Limits is we fund something, an idea or a technology that isn't covered. And then we follow it through to evaluation. And is it something that then will advance? So Medley was the original aspect of Medley was funded from Test Your Limits as an example.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. But we've had some great failures too. Oh, we've had some awesome failures, which is important, right? We've had ideas that seemed like great ideas. Yeah. And then we implemented them and then you studied them and you went, oh, that was really dumb. Right. and that's important.
Yeah.
And that's what Test Your Limits has done and continues to do. So it funded a lot of the original work that we did up north in the Indigenous communities, and we've now been able to secure other funding. But I think this idea of changing the quality of life for patients living with heart failure has been at the that's been the core principle. And Test Your Limits has just been a really amazing way to try to fundraise in order to do that.
Well, it's just, taking yourself included, right? And then taking people on these extreme, I don't know what to call it, extreme adventure trips, right? Where you're mountain climbing and trekking across, these remote areas. And then to me, that whole aspect of, well, this is what you can do. And you mentioned Dale Shipham, who was a former firefighter and a heart transplant recipient, right?
Yep,
and
correct.
he went, and
he went on all the trips.
Yeah, he went on all these trips. And so it makes me think about the role of fear. Fear after you have had an event, right? And you're worried, right? You're afraid, can I still do the things I'm doing? And yet you're able to take this heart transplant patient and he's able to do this incredible feat, athletic feat, really.
Yeah. So there's both fear and liberation, I would say. So, I've had the incredible opportunity to spend a lot of time with Dale. And to a certain degree, when you've survived, a protracted cardiac arrest and you've come through, and this is common knowledge, so I'm allowed to say this, but and then you've come through a transplant, there's a little bit of liberation there because I've already survived this, and now I'm going to get on with the living, given this opportunity, right? To do it. So there's a bit of liberation there, and I think as a broad statement, when somebody goes through a crucial or critical cardiac event, whatever the cardiac event is, there is fear. You're right. And one of the things that we try to do when we work with patients is, the use of things like cardiac rehabilitation, where it's supervised and you're getting back to activity, but it's in a supervised way to make sure you're safe to do it. Knowing what is safe to do and what is maybe not safe to do.
Right.
Trying to find ways to alleviate that fear. And for some people, even PTSD, right? With some of the events, it can be really quite traumatic. And it can be quite traumatic on the caregivers. Because the patient may not be aware of the event as they're experiencing it. For example, a cardiac arrest. But the caregiver that's there in the moment is completely aware of it. And the patient wakes up and is, well, what happened? and may not have any recollection of it, but the caregiver, right? So we want to think about fear as it relates not just to the patient, but to their care town, their care environment. And I think there can be fear. There can also be some liberation. If you've been symptomatic for all this time and then you have a treatment and your symptoms go away, that can be pretty liberating in terms of what you're then able to do. So like most things, there is both sides of the coin.
Both sides of the coin, yeah. Where did you go in December?
So we went to New Zealand. We had, it was a beautiful trip. We went with Yamnuska. I strongly recommend them if you want to do something that's adventurous. It's a Canadian company out of Canmore. They're amazing. Yamnuska, shout out for them again. And we did this trip with them. And it was, Tim Ritchie designed this trip. Barry Blanchard came with us again. We went climbing first, and then we did class 4 rapids, and then the bikes were there, and we then biked to the coast. So we went from summit to sea, and then to finish it off, we went back into the mountains and climbed in the Cook region. We had incredible local New Zealand guides. They were just remarkable. And we finished up, all of us summiting this mountain that looked out onto Cook. And the mountain itself has tremendous spirituality in the Maori tradition. And so for every way possible, the fact that the whole team got to the top, and the spirituality of the mountain, it was a perfect day that we had to climb. Everybody felt that they had, done that, test your limits. It was remarkable. It was an awesome adventure.
Oh, yeah. Tell me what these trips give you.
Well, on the surface, the very obvious thing for me is marrying what I love, which is the outdoors, being on the land, with what I love, which is medicine and the opportunity to fundraise to be able to do the work that we do. So that is the very obvious marriage of those two things. But more than anything, through the experiences of having altitude edema, of being stranded and pinned in a tent for 60 hours near the North Pole, and learning what it might be like to face the life and death of waiting, not knowing if the weather was going to break as we were running out of fuel and food. Were we going to be able to get off the ice? And Dale's turning to me and saying, well, that's what it's like waiting for a heart transplant. You don't know if heart's going to come in time. So having that experience, each trip has brought its own flavor or event or circumstance that has made me realize how precious life is, how meaningful it is to have quality in our lives, how we define quality in our lives. And I hope I brought that back with me. I hope it's made me a better doctor. I mean, that's the deeper piece that I've had, and lots of time to reflect, lots of time to meditate on really just how precious life is.
Yeah. I just find it so interesting, though, that, you deal with patients in life or death situations, and you put yourself in that kind of situation as well.
We didn't really expect to be in that situation, right?
No, hey, there's risk. There's always risk involved.
It's the classic shit happens, right? We didn't expect to be in that situation.
And the thing is, though, you keep running back to it.
Well,
It's not like you say, well, that's it. After going through that, I don't think I'm going to do this anymore. No.
Well, I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so that is true. But each of these experiences, you do go back because you learn about yourself. You learn about the team that you're with because you're in each other's pockets on these trips. In New Zealand, we were at a place called Broderick Hut, and the hut is like smaller than my office. or maybe it is my office size, but it's certainly not much bigger than my office. And we slept in that hut, ate in that hut. We had bad weather. So we were stuck in that hut. I mean, you could go out, but you couldn't really go far. And we were playing cards and, laughing and it's just that time. To some people, it might seem like, how could you actually have spent that time on bunks that go around the hut with one table in and you're all packed in there? And it's like, I would love to go back and spend more time with those people in that hut and hear the stories and learn from their experiences. And, well, of course, play cards again, because Tim is a really good card player. But I am grateful for the experience.
To me, it almost sounds as if those experiences boil down to like the essence of living.
I think they do.
Yeah.
I think they do, Mary. And I think, so Dave Smith is a crucial part of our team. He's had a kidney transplant recipient, and he's had a kidney transplant, rather. He had a living donor from his brother. And so hearing their experiences and where they place their value.
Yeah.
That's it. A lot of meaning there.
You said it makes you appreciate life more going through this. How do you view death?
Well, there's still some fear there, I have to say. I think a very natural respect for some of the endeavors we've done and the danger and the potential of dying. I do want to feel that when that moment comes for me, I will have lived a life as close as I can to no regret. And sometimes that means reflecting on things that have happened, relationships, and, wanting to make sure that you have some closure on some of those things and not waiting, because and there may not end up being an opportunity. So I hope that I would look back and feel that I have had a full life, regardless of when the moment comes.
Heather, you're always so thoughtful with your answers, and it's just been great speaking with you again and hearing all about your research. Thanks so much for coming on.
It was great chatting with you and catching up again. It's been a while. It was super fun to have the far-ranging discussion. I always enjoy it. So my pleasure. Look forward to catching up again.
Well, the feeling's mutual. Thanks again, Heather. My guest has been Heather Ross. She's a cardiologist and the head of cardiology at the Peter Munk Cardiac Center at the University Health Network. For more information on Heather, her research and her work, and also on her organization, Test Your Limits, you can check out our show notes. That's it for the show today. If you enjoyed it and you would like to hear more, please consider supporting us with a financial donation. You can head over to cramideas.com. You can also follow us on social. Our handle is @CramIdeas. Thanks for listening, and see you back here next time.